something.
I'm just going to take my NAS offline for a minute because that's what it is. It's the NAS is doing something. I don't know what it's doing. But taking it back offline solves the problem. There's some. I'll have to ride through it and see what I can figure out. But no worries.
Boy.
That yeah, we're back to normal now. That's interesting to see. I'm gonna have to figure out what that is. So, transitioning back. Zen 4, 96 cores. Zen 4 EPYC. Let's lead with that. Is make sure everybody understands EPYC. Zen 4 EPYC. We'll have 12-channel DDR5 as opposed to 8-channel that Ice Lake has and Sapphire Rapids will have. So 12-channel DDR5, and also it's going to have
AVX 512.
AVX 512 support. Now, guys, let's remember this is AMD isn't expected to launch Zen 4 until later in the year next year. Cache early in the year to kind of combat Alder Lake and combat Sapphire Rapids.
Yeah.
I don't, this is a little bit of speculative conversation too. It is what it is, but it's it's something that's out there that's in the workstation world we really do need to talk about. And Zen 4 coming with AVX 512 is huge for the workstation market. However, just based on our current, the current world that we live in, there's leaks and stuff that say Threadripper and Threadripper Pro Zen 3 are getting ready to launch here pretty soon. But that's, leaks and rumors. Once again, I can't confirm any of it. I don't know that Chris can confirm any of it. I mean, and we talk to a lot of people in the world, but there's nobody that would say that to us. That's for sure. Keep in mind, it is what it is. But if workstations in the AMD world are focused more around Zen 3 next year, they're not going to have AVX 512. And so that could put the workstation, AMD's workstation, which hasn't been a really big focused market for them for some strange reason. Like,
yeah,
you'd thought.
They've been more server and
client. Server and client computing. And
gaming, customer, yeah.
So the three markets out there in the computing world, in the x86 computing world, are server, HEDT, which is workstation, for lack of a better word, and client computing. Client computing is consumer grade stuff, and none of the consumer grade stuff that they have, let me rephrase. Consumer grade usually gets the tech first because it's easier to manufacture on a small scale. That's great. Then server picks it up right after that because server is where you make all your money. Look at Xeon Scalable versus Xeon W, for instance. Because you're usually selling 2 to 8 chips per machine. So, of course, you're going to make more money per machine. All right? Then you've got workstation that falls in and HEDT that usually fall in shortly thereafter. That's why when 8th gen Alder Lake or was it Skylake? What did they call
the 8700K?
Yeah, what did they call it? What was that?
That was
maybe it's still Skylake. Skylake Refresh.
Coffee Lake.
Coffee Lake. Okay, so Coffee Lake.
Coffee Lake.
So Coffee Lake, for instance, is just
so weird.
Yeah, and then Coffee Lake Refresh. And a Coffee Lake Refresh, which was 9th gen. So 8th gen launches roughly a year after Skylake. That was like 9 months. And then we get no, it wasn't. 8th gen was KB Lake. Coffee Lake was 9th gen.
7th gen was KB Lake. 8th gen was Coffee Lake. 9th gen was Coffee Lake Refresh. The
7900X was Skylake.
No, that was the 6700K.
7900X.
Oh. That's HEDT.
That's right. So okay, but that is
we just went from Z series to X series.
That's right. So think about it this way though. we can think about it this way. We can have this conversation this way. So Skylake launches, KB Lake launches. That's a year after that. In between KB Lake and Coffee Lake on client, you get Skylake and KB Lake on Extreme. So
Yes.
that's a year behind even for Intel. And Xeon's getting it about the same time with Intel too. Now, how things launch and whatnot, and they've kind of announced this stuff. We know that later this year we're getting Alder Lake, and then at the beginning of next year sometime they're saying we're going to get Sapphire Rapids. Those are confirmed by Intel statements, as long as nothing else delays them, which who knows. But so server's going to get it first. Server's going to get second after client, and then HEDT in the Threadripper version of stuff will get some form of Genoa. But we haven't even gotten Milan on HEDT yet. So whenever that comes, and rumors are out there when it'll come, but whenever that does come, it's going to basically Sapphire, and this is kind of what I think is the strange thing to me. When it comes to HEDT, when it comes to like true workstation CPUs, they're really not going to be battling Genoa. They're really not going to be battling Zen 4 in the workstation market.
I didn't hear anything for like the past 8 seconds.
Okay.
I think that Teams might be having some issues.
Okay, I can check Teams. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
My internet might just be bad here for some reason today. I can always go. You know what I could do is I could go reset the router. I have not done that in I don't know how long, but we'll drop off.
It's fine.
Yeah, for right now, I think it's fine.
It's fine. We can wrap up. Yeah.
So going back to that last statement. So, and I haven't. It doesn't seem to have dropped any frames recently. So just so you know, only a couple hundred last 45 last hour minutes till they drop. But I say all that to say this. So Zen 4 is really not going to, in the workstation market, Zen 4 is not going to be competing with Sapphire Rapids even.
It'll be competing with
Granite Rapids. In the HEDT market, that's what it's, unless they have a way to pull things forward faster, which with, supply issues still being out there, that's just the truth, guys. I mean, stuff's coming out pretty soon. Like the world is so rapidly changing tech-wise right now. It's a big deal. Next story up on the list is AMD EPYC Milan,
which is current,
being more energy efficient. Here, Ice Lake, it's a more powerful, power-hungry chip. It also doesn't have as many cores for, it's not going to be designed to be competitive with this. Now, Ice Lake HEDT versus or workstation, so Xeon W, for instance. Ice Lake Xeon W versus which only goes up to 38 cores versus a AMD 64 core processor. They're probably going to be similar in power, and Intel is going to be a little bit slower. I'm just running basic numbers in my head. Intel's not going to be as fast in that perspective. That's okay. And Intel doesn't have to, because they control 90% of the workstation market right now. Like, outside of buying a Threadripper Pro machine from somebody like Chris, 90% of the market, you have to look at I always base the workstation market, where things are going, on the big three: HP, Lenovo, and Dell. Those are the three manufacturers that mass construct at scale and typically would sell to a Fortune 500 company. You're a couple of them, Chris might get a couple of them, Top Flight, let me rephrase, I'm saying Chris, but Top Flight might get a couple of machines to these Fortune 500 companies just because they're looking for something at a small business in their territory, or so on and so forth. But realistically, when you're buying thousands of machines from somebody, the only people with the scale to do that is a Dell.
Right.
is an HP, is a Lenovo. And the only company right now that offers Threadripper Pro in a machine is Lenovo, of those three. That may change in the next generation. I'd hope it would, but like right now, that because I mean people ought to be seeing how the performance per watt and how better it is. But at the same time, Ice Lake's right behind that. Now, most companies don't offer dual socket, or there isn't a dual socket Threadripper Pro machine. It just doesn't exist.
I saw that somebody. This is kind of off topic, but I saw that somebody was able to get 2 Threadripper Pros to work on an EPYC board.
Interesting.
It was really weird. It wasn't. It was not. I would not recommend it for a workstation setup because it was
Not
a little bit.
certified by
It was.
anybody.
It was very unstable. But
And yeah,
it
it's,
did.
and for lack
But
of
it
a
did
better word, it's
work.
not certified. It worked, but it's not certified.
No.
And anything that's not certified means you're going to kind of lack a lot of driver support, so on and so forth. If you could do that, it would make a lot of sense because, and so the difference between EPYC, let's go back and have a quick discussion, sidebar, quick discussion on the differences between EPYC and Threadripper Pro or Threadripper and client, so Ryzen.
Yeah.
And the same is present when you talk about Xeon Scalable versus Xeon W versus Core.
I. Yeah.
All right. It all relates to clock speed.
Yep.
So Xeon Scalable, slower max turbos, slower base clocks. Xeon W, so and same thing goes for EPYCs. All right. Threadripper Pro, faster turbos, but still not as fast as client. So still not as fast as Ryzen turbos. Xeon W, faster turbos than Scalable, but not as fast as Core. And that's just the way the world works. So when you end up running those stacks the way people will run those stacks, that's the power trade-offs and the clock speed trade-offs that you get. All right. So Ice Lake being more power hungry for a certain design. I mean, ultimately, guys, buying a work. I'm just going to say it, Chris, and you can laugh at me, but you know it's true. If you're spending $25,000 on a workstation, guys, power is not your concern. Servers now here's the difference. You're spending $200,000 or you're spending $2 million on a bunch of servers. Power might be your concern.
Which if so, Cloudflare is a it's like a web content acceleration company. I forget what they actually are, but that's pretty close. So they have a lot of server draw, and they're trying to control power draw and cooling.
Yep.
So I could see how it has actual dollar value for them.
Oh, and anytime you get into that many servers, guys, that's always going to be a thing. Always going to be a thing. So, yes, we can lean on that. Now, the last thing we have here in our rundown to talk about today is the Sapphire Rapids. You know, we talked about the. So, I'm going to scroll back up so we can look at the picture. Bring this in with the Genoa mock-up. But this is the design. This is what's called MCM, multi-chip module. All right. Genoa, multi-chip module as well from AMD. All right. What's different about these? So the real difference is on board this is you've got multiple, multiple chiplets, and I wish I had a. You know what? I'm gonna find one. This is a great conversation piece. So,
You're gonna find a die shot of EPYC.
I'm gonna find a Zen 1 Threadripper.
The really bad architecture.
Hold on now. No, it was not.
Yes, it was.
Okay, but it was Zen. Okay, think about it this way. So, and a lot of people are having these conversations right now.
Zen is good.
Alder
The memory
Lake.
architecture on Threadripper 1 was awful.
So we got to have this MCM discussion real quick, because Zen 1 was a multi-chip setup. This is a Threadripper die. There's 4 dies. All right. Let me see if I can get a shot of pH. Rapids die. This is going to be. I don't want to leak one. I want one from off at architecture day. So this is. I mean, this isn't from Intel, but it's good enough for me to use to reference for you guys. So, all right, I'm actually going to split my screen here. So, this screen. Here we go. This is Zen 1. They used the Infinity fabric with links between each die. Our Rapids die. They use something called EMIB. All right, which is basically copper connections in between each die. Right. The difference with Zen is, so on these dies there's 4 links. Right, and I learned this by listening to Anantech's Dr. Ian Cutters the other day. Chris, this is maybe the first time you hear this, but it's worth hearing. So Zen 4 had 4 die-to-die interconnects. There's Zen 1, 4 die-to-die interconnects. They only needed 3, but they could mirror these things and flip them, and then only had to use each one of the 3. Like, let's say there's 4 here, 4 here, 4 here, and 4 here. And there weren't. I don't know exactly how the layout was inside the chip, but let's say that's where they're at. They could use these 3 and abandon this 4. These 3, abandon this 4. These 3, abandon this 4. These 3, abandon this 4. They could abandon them. They were all interconnected. It didn't matter how you work it. EMIB, as explained by Intel at Architecture Day, has, and I don't know the layout based on the chip, but I'm going to make a mild assumption here, but set up. EMIB has 6 links this way, 6 links this way, 4 links this way, and 4 links this way.
I'm not seeing what you're pointing at.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I don't know why my mouse isn't showing up on the screen. To explain it better, I guess. Why is my mouse pointer not showing? Well, I'll explain it this way. So, on screen, and the way I'm looking at this, look at the 4 short sides of that are closest to each other of Zen 1. There were 4 interconnects on there, 4 little fingers. Think about having 4 little fingers that sit off the short sides, right? All right. They only needed 3 per chiplet. So they would abandon the top 2 on the top 2 chips and the bottom 2 on the bottom 2 chips. So the bottom 1 on the bottom 2 chips and the top 1 on the top 2 chips, and you still had all your links between your setup. They're manufactured that way. Look at the Sapphire Rapids 4-piece setup. All right. If you're looking at the horizontal axis line there are 6 links between the left one and the right one. And if you look at the vertical stack, there's 4 links between the top 2 and 4 links between the bottom 2. It's not uniform. It's not uniform for a reason, because it relates to the mesh architecture of the core, but it makes manufacturing the actual dies more difficult, because it means you can't just manufacture one die and then flip it like AMD did. But this is their first generation MCM design, right? Multi-chip module design. We don't know the total number of cores. We don't know anything like that. And that's fine. We don't need to. Intel's going to bring all that out soon enough. We'll be good. But what we do know is that it is going to also offer, and you can even see it on this die. See those little squares in the top and in all the corners, the little brown looking squares? going to be HBM on package.
I saw that, and I think we covered that in a previous podcast.
We did.
That's a big deal.
We can talk about this a little bit more because this is official now. There's going to be up to 64 gigs of on chip HBM, 16 gigs per
Ice Lake podcast.
Ice Lake, yep, 16 gigs per module. Now
that's a heck ton of cache.
Don't expect it to be that. Yeah, it's a heck ton of final level, last level cache. Basically, you could call it, for lack of a better word, L4 cache.
Yeah.
L3 usually is the highest, and that's usually shared amongst all the cores. This is like going to be a L4 cache that's shared among all the cores again, and it's going to really enhance performance. Now, once again, learning more about it from Architecture Day and Ian Cuttress's coverage of it, which I highly recommend. Go and watch and listen to Tech Potato. That's a great YouTube channel to follow. He talks an awful lot about this kind of stuff and really does break it down better. So, talking about that for that instance, and going back to covering what it is, Ian Cuttress was explaining though. So they say that they kind of counteract each other. They say in the presentation in Architecture Day that the chip modules themselves will be the exact same size. There's not going to be two sockets for Sapphire Rapids. It's all going to be the 4674.
God, that's a big chip.
I was just reading this.
Because Ice Lake is 4189. Holy crap.
Let's see if I can find the actual spec on it because they say it. They talk about the actual, get into what, and they say that they're not, they say that, but then they go back and kind of show an HBM version of the die shot, and I think it's maybe because the node shrink hadn't happened when they had the testing done. But they say that, but it sounds like the Aurora supercomputer, the first one to get it, may have different sockets for it, just because the physical size constraints of putting HBM on chip. Getting HBM modules there, it's going to be a challenge. But so they say that might be the issue. I don't know. I can't answer these questions because I'm not an actual CPU architect. But just imagine about it like they do. And go back just a hot second. Let's say they end up with what is it, Chris? Let's say that they end up with the top dies can't have HBM. That's fine. Most workstation users don't buy the top level die. I mean,
no.
Think about in a workstation in general. Most people aren't going to go out and buy a 64 thread Ripper chip, a 64 core thread Ripper chip, or a 64 EPYC chip.
No.
Unless you have a specific workflow that supports that, and you may, but I doubt it. But unless you have a specific workflow that supports that, I mean, come on, guys, it's not gonna be the case. So I'm going to bounce back to this thought process for everybody. But let's say you could buy let's say that they launch and what the rumors are is true. It's a 56 core processor. I don't know what it will be. But let's say you can't get HBM on the 56 core model, but you could get it on a 32 core model. More people are likely to buy that 32 core model anyways, and the extra price bump you're going to be able to get for that now will make it totally worth it. So, guys, that's going to be something to look at here very soon. You got to be aware of that. Now, this is the round robin conversation because, like I said, we lost an interview at the beginning, but I gotta go forward with this one and say we got to have a little conversation too. Me and Chris have been talking about new machines for my work for a long time, and I'm getting excited because we're finally coming down to the point where it sounds like we're going to actually get the funding approved to buy them. Guys, this is going to be awesome. Whenever I have Chris build that machine, we may not build it on stream. He may not build it on stream. He may, I don't know. He may have me come up and
Probably.
help him build it on stream because it might be fun. So we'll see how we get to that little ending there. But yeah, this is. I'm excited to tell you this because I do have another machine. I don't know if I even told you this, Chris, but I'm actually getting ready to buy another laptop.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I just bought one. I just bought a 60 from Dell. It's a Precision 7760. It's going to have the 8-core Tiger Lake Xeon, which does have AVX 512. And we've talked about it, and now I'm excited that I get one to actually play with and test. It's going to have an A5000, although it's the mobile chip, so it's not quite as good as the big boy. But it's still got 16 gigs of VRAM. It's going to be it's going to be banging. It's going to be pretty awesome. I was hoping and hoping that I could get an Alder Lake laptop, but as well, since I got told to buy another one. But I'm probably going to not be able to do that because I don't think Alder Lake's going to be in mobile workstations before the end of the year. I don't believe that. Like, it's supposed to launch, but according to everything that I've heard and seen out there, but I just don't believe, truthfully, it'll be in. I don't think Dell will have it in their precision line by the end of the year. Probably earlier, Q2, Q3 next year before it finally makes it there. If it does, there might be something better by then. But say all that to say this: this is an exciting time for tech. We finally have competition again, but we finally have competition, y'all. So just be aware. Like, don't jump to conclusions and make a purchase right now if you can wait. If you have a need, there's never been a better time to look at the options. You've got a Zen 3 Threadripper. It would have to support the same socket. There's no reason to up it. Threadripper Pro is possibly coming out. A new Threadripper Pro. There's been leaks about that. Like I said, we're not here to confirm or deny leaks or talk about leaks because realistically, there's not a whole lot we're going to know about it. But we do have some upcoming. There's going to be some upcoming videos. I'm actually getting ready to do some work here now after this one's done here in a few minutes to start setting up the W6800 and the machine behind me. I'm gonna have to reinstall Windows on it because Windows is being awkward.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. Windows, but it's not even Windows 11. That's what makes me even madder about this. The most machines that I'm using right now have Windows 11 on them, folks. And Windows 11 has not really given me any issues. Windows 10, for some reason, right now, is just deciding to be a pain in my butt side. I don't like it. But I'm going to fix it. I'm going to get it working so I can start doing some benchmarks and testing it with some point clouds and all that other stuff. And it's going to be fun. There will be a video that will come out. I will show off how it's working, what it's working on, what it's doing well, what it's not doing well. And I'll be completely honest with you, Chris. The reason I'm not even going to try to put it in my Intel build is because the Intel build is still PCI Express 3.0, and I think that because it's designed by AMD, it's going to work better on something that's got PCIe 4. So
that's a fair statement.
We had that article about Zen 4, and it talks about 12-channel DDR5 and Zen 4. But the thing is, we also don't know if Zen 4, everything that's out there rumor-wise, and I'll close with this one for us. When you listen to rumors and you listen to leaks and you look at what everybody's talking about, there's two very big differences right now that I'm seeing with Zen 4. And maybe it's because there's going to be a different I/O die for EPYC and Threadripper 4, 5, 6, whatever they're going to call it. Maybe there's just going to be a difference there so that we can, be happy about it. But realistically, my man, Zen 4 is going to have DDR5 on EPYC, but not have DDR5 on client, which is what everyone is saying right now. Seems very silly to me.
Yeah, that.
And also keep this in mind too, guys. Intel is they're and we've talked about a few of them already, so I've got to bring this one up because it's been all over the news and all over the tech podcasts and so on and so forth. That Intel's Alder Lake CPU, which is an 8+8 with 24 threads, is beating in benchmarks, beating the 5950X.
I forgot about that link.
We don't even have to have a link to it because I mean it's truly a rumor, it's speculation. I don't want to cover it from a deep dive, but Intel's betting hard right now on these E-core designs where they're not going to basically and Intel used to always tell us 4 cores is enough. And they did it for 10 freaking years, guys. 4 cores is enough. You don't need more than 4 cores. And then to give themselves a 20% bump in performance for 3 generations, 8th, 9th, 10th generation, what did they do? They gave us 2 more cores. That was the only way to get them a percentage bump in performance because it was all the same rough Skylake architecture with maybe a little bit more clock speed.
Yep.
But think about that for a minute, guys. Clock speed and all that other stuff, it's great, but now we're finally seeing competition return. AMD has a product that is now AMD is not anywhere near as big a company as Intel, and Intel's got money to throw at things. So don't be surprised if Intel's interesting. If Intel and AMD and the conversation they go with becomes a very interesting conversation. Intel's new architectures, if you go back and take a chance to look at Architecture Day and what they talked about, they have really redesigned this architecture. The Golden Cove cores that are going to be in both Sapphire Rapids and Alder Lake are very different than previous generations. And I wouldn't be surprised if down the road, 5 or 6 years from now, we start seeing server chips that get E-cores as well. And because guys, think about ARM. That's been ARM's crutch for years. They got a high power core. Now you even have it where they have 2 very high power cores, 4 high power cores, and 4 efficiency cores. You may say Intel walked down the same road with x86 cores and multi-core designs because if you notice, like I said, the 8 threads from Gracemont plus the 8 cores and 8 total threads from Gracemont plus the 8 cores and 16 threads from Golden Cove are truly proving to be a force to reckon with inside of the client market. I mean, there's a good chance that we could see efficiency cores and stuff like that coming out from. We could see MCM designs, and this is something to just. I mean, like I said, it's not really speculation if it's just wishful thinking. This is wishful thinking, guys. So, and I'll say this to you, Chris, because I think it's funny. But imagine a day here in the near future where Intel and AMD are fighting over, 8 to 16 big cores on a client computer, right? And then 64 efficiency cores. And the efficiency cores, the E cores, the small cores, we get to the point where, so right now, if you look at the die shots that Intel shows off, 4 efficiency cores fit in the die space of 2 power cores. Power cores are for your single-threaded applications that need that high-power single-thread application. So the efficiency cores are all multi-thread stuff. So streaming, for instance, on a laptop with 8 big cores that really games well, and then 8 little cores that can run all of your streaming software. Imagine what happens in 5 or 6 years when you've got 8 big cores on your, or let's say they finally move and they go to 12, and maybe they go to 4, maybe they do go to 16. But let's use 12 as the number. Let's say 5 years from now, you've got 12 big cores but you got 64 little cores.
That's a potent little computer.
In a laptop, that's freaking awesome.
Oh.
Chris, but Intel's getting ready to launch a GPU, guys.
Yeah.
An actual like competitive GPU.
We're gonna have to cover that soon.
They talked about that a lot. Now we're not going to go over it more, but Intel's getting ready. Intel, people forget, Intel has. When was the first integrated graphics chip involved? I think it was when they took out the South Bridge. So it was probably the core lineup.
Yeah.
So it's probably been 10, 12 years. All right. Intel's been in the graphics game. They just haven't been in the high-end graphics game. Now all of a sudden they're making moves that direction. I mean, like they talk about with also, this was something, I don't know if I've mentioned it to you before, Chris. Sapphire Rapids Architecture Day was huge. If you have a chance to go back and look at Architecture Day and just watch the video and actually see what all they talk about, Sapphire Rapids is going to have GPU-esque like cores on board. Inside the CPU, AI type cores, basically. Tensor type cores, if you want to call them that, on the CPU package itself. Imagine if you didn't have to push data to the GPU to do AI, and truly the GPU only had to do graphics rendering.
That would skip some hops.
Save an awful lot on power efficiency for GPUs too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, cost of GPUs has gone through the roof. I mean, think about it. When I first built a computer, I bought a 295, a GTX 295. Great little card. Got it laying around here somewhere. Cool little setup. Cool as all get out. 2 GPUs on package. Plenty of VRAM, all that stuff for the GTX 295 was like 2005. All right. No, it was like 2007, 2008. So think about it like that. GTX 295. All right. That was still only like a $500 card, and it was literally top of the line. Here we are 15 years later, 16 years later. Top of the line is close to $2,000.
Yeah.
And it's a power monster. Even that 295 only needed a 6-pin and an 8-pin.
Whereas a 3090, I saw an article by somebody talking about a 3090 Super.
Oh yeah, it's
God,
I mean, and it's drawing 400 watts. Like what the ham
ridiculous.
sandwich, guys? Well, we've had a conversation here. I'm gonna drop this one off, Chris. I think I'll talk to you for a few more minutes after this. But yeah, I'm gonna drop off here. We're gonna drop off here, guys. We do appreciate it. Stay tuned. Like I said, there's gonna be some breakout videos on YouTube coming soon that will just be on YouTube, talking about the Radeon Pro W6800, the Radeon Pro W6600. I'm not go find benchmarks. Go find a channel that does benchmark. But on the channel, guys, you're going to see realistic use cases. Keep that in mind. People using these things for work. That's what we're all about. Like, I'm going back to our first little discussion about the 8 terabyte. Ain't nobody in this business need an 8 terabyte SSD, especially when it costs what they cost. 4 terabytes is nice, but why not just buy a RAID card, a bunch of 2 terabytes for less than you have to pay for an 8 terabyte, single 8. So it is what it is, guys. Have a great one. We will talk to you all soon. Be safe, enjoy yourselves, and yeah. He's Chris. Talk to you soon.
Bye.